Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming along. What an amazing turnout. I'm so chuffed. I think this is now our third Women in Data and AI get-together meetup. So I'm really excited. I think this might be the best turnout yet. So thank you all so much for coming along. Hope you all had some drinks and some pizza, so you're all full up now. So just a quick sort of run through of what we're going to be doing tonight, but I'm going to start by saying thank you very much. I'm going to do slides at the same time, hopefully. Okay. There we are. So thank you very much to our live streamers who are live to air. So in case you didn't know, we're actually live streaming this event tonight as well as you all being here in person. So, and I think our Wi-Fi is working tonight, so that might be the first time yet. Hurrah. So thank you very much to them. So a bit of blurb about what we're going to be doing tonight then. I'll get my notes. We are joined by two exciting speakers tonight who are going to talk about the fascinating work that they do in data. We've got two short presentations. We've got Martina Pugliese. Yay, got it right. And Cara Thompson, and they are going to talk about their work in data, exciting projects they've been involved in, and then after their talks, we'll do a bit of a fireside chat as well. So hang on to any questions that you have, be thinking during their talks, and we'll come around and do Q&A at the end, so save any questions that you might have. Sorry. Before we start that, though, hopefully you've all already heard of the Data Lab community. I'll whip on to the next slide. Here we are. If you haven't heard of the Data Lab community, please feel free to scan the QR code and join. It's a place for people who are working in data and AI, who have an interest in data and AI, and obviously we run individual groups for specific people, such as women in data and AI. So it's a really great place. It's not just for technical people, it's for anyone who's got an interest in the topic, and there are a number of different groups in operation, so please feel free to join that. Have I covered everything, Stephen? I think I have. Okay, without further ado then, let me just introduce Cara. Cara is a founder and data visualization consultant. She's got an academic background and specialises in helping researchers with data-driven organisations and turn their data insights into clear and compelling visualizations. I'll let her tell you a little more about that herself. Can you thank her for coming up, please?
Thank you very much. I hope I've unmuted my microphone. Have I? Have I not? I think I have. Yeah, you're good. I have here. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I will just launch my slides and then we can get going. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here and to meet other people who are doing great stuff with data and local people who are doing great stuff with data. And yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to getting to know more of you as the evening progresses. Today I'm going to be talking about the stuff that I do, and I felt I couldn't really come to an event where there was AI in the title and not have a go at least generating one AI image. So here is a fancy squirrel that I created, and I've popped a link somewhere in the presentation if you want to make your own. But I'm going to be talking about data visualization and the impact that it has, and a few projects that I've been working on recently with that at the centre. By way of introduction, I'm Cara Thompson, and the way that I ended up here was a childhood in an English-speaking family in France, where everybody plays a musical instrument. And so I grew up with a love for languages and music and how the brain makes sense of what is essentially noise. And why do we find some noises pretty and some noises really ugly? How does that work? I had the privilege of taking that into a PhD in psychology, where I put electrode caps on people and played them really weird sentences and music that I'd concocted and saw how their brains reacted to that, which is great fun. And then I took the statistics from that, spent a bit of time teaching research methods, and then moved to the Royal College of Surgeons just across the road, where I helped analyse the patterns in the exam data. And if any of you have hung out with surgeons before, you'll know that they're great people to hang out with, but they hate not understanding stuff. And so as part of that, I developed a knack with data viz to help them see the patterns in the data quickly so that they could then go on and ask intelligent questions about what they were seeing. And then I set up shop as a data viz consultant independently from that. The thing that drives me is helping others maximize the impact of their own expertise. So if I can use my expertise to speed up the work that they're doing and help it have a great impact, then that makes me really happy. And since this event is about career paths and getting to know each other, I should add something to the intro slide. I've got 2 little girls who arrived in our lives around the time when I was moving between the college and becoming a data viz consultant, and we can chat more about that later if we want to. My images are not showing up. That one isn't, never mind. So we talked about maximizing the impact of other people's expertise, and there are 3 ways in which I do that. One is training, one is designing data viz systems, and one is providing data to viz commissions. And I've just wrapped up a project where I did the latter 2 of those, so I'm going to focus on that tonight. But there'll probably be some nuggets that you can take away and apply in your own organization, so there might be a bit of implicit training going on alongside all of that. So data to viz, what do I mean by that? I mean getting from your data straight to a conversation starting visualization. When we think of graphs, sometimes we think of the kind of standard stuff that Excel will churn out, but they don't have to look like that. They can look like this or this, but I don't seem, I wonder if we've lost the internet connection. Yeah. That's fine.
Refresh?
Yeah, let's do that. Be pulling them in. There's nothing on that slide, it'll be on the next one. There we go, perfect, thank you very much. Technology, eh? Thank you. So yeah, graphs can look more like this. So these are 2 graphs that I've created straight from the data. One of them is about data in the bake-off. I love the bake-off, and I'll come back to that. And the other one is about the color of Lego bricks and how that evolved over time. And both of these were created straight from the data. If you want to see how I did it, there's a link at the bottom that takes you to the code from them. Here's more local examples using weather data to do with how much it rains in Edinburgh. It happens to rain a lot during the fringe, so the tourists get the best of the weather. And the other one to do with daylight during the day and how much I'm looking forward to longer days coming up. But I think one of the things that I really enjoy about doing these is thinking, what's the clearest way that I can present the data, and then how can I make it good to look at so that people will want to engage with it more? And so going straight from the data to the visualization, but via some design processes with a bit of influence from the art world, is something that I really, really enjoy doing. So I thought I would bring it back to maybe more familiar territory with a bar graph. I'm going to be using data from the bake-off package. I don't know what it is about the bake-off. I think watching people getting so stressed about cakes, I find it really relaxing, and I'm not quite sure what that says about me. Hopefully nothing too unhealthy. But I'm going to pop the code there. Those of you who want to see the code can go and explore it, because it'll all be up on my website. Those of you who don't want to see the code, you just ignore that side of the slide, and you'll be fine. All I'm doing here is grabbing the data that we need to feed it into a plot, and then we're going to build a visualization. And it looks like this. So we fed the components data in to ggplot, which is an R package for visualization, and we've got a perfectly functional plot, but it's not very pretty, and there's a lot of text, and it's a little bit all over the place. So we're going to tidy it up a little bit, make it easier to read, add in some annotations so that we can see what goes where, and then we're going to make the colors more meaningful, because that helps us see that chocolate really is the dominant ingredient in the bake, so no surprises there, really. And now we can turn that into a function. So we're going to create a function that is called bake-off plot, and it takes the data, and then it wrangles it, and then it feeds it into the plotting stuff, and it styles it, and it's all happening in here. And then next time we want to create it, all we need to do is call bake-off plot, and ta-da, here's the plot. And now you're thinking, okay, that's great, but why on earth would I do that? Why not just create it in Excel, copy, take a screenshot, pop it in MS Paint, stick some text boxes over the top of it, job done, it'll be fine. The reason for that is partly, there's nothing wrong with mixing your tools, actually. We all do it, and if there's tools that you need to mix in to make it easier, go for it. But this saves you from that scenario where that colleague comes knocking on your door and says, that data, we thought we'd lost it. I found it again. And you've already made the plot, you've made it look pretty, you've put everything in the right place. I found the data, we can include it again, we can put it back in. And you're thinking, oh, yay for science, but no, I've just spent all this time getting this right, and then you'd have to start it all from scratch. The other scenario that it saves you from is the copy-paste error issue. If you're creating all your plots and they have all those lines of code, every time you're creating it, you're copy-pasting that in different places. That's a lot of code where you could potentially make a copy-paste error. And the other thing is that just one small change, I don't like the font anymore, I want to change it. If you've copy-pasted that all over the place, you've got to change it in all the different places. Whereas if you create a function, you change it once and it applies it across the board. So I really like creating those things for organizations because it speeds up the process, keeps the code nice and maintainable, and means that everything looks on brand. And the other scenario that it helps with is if someone comes in and says, actually, the first 100 bakes we need to discard from this. We can't use them in. There was something funny about the way that they did them. All you need to do is reuse your function and just select the data so that it's just 101 bakes onwards, and then you can create a plot. Or you can take different samples. And you can just keep going and create things as you need to from that plot. But taking random samples of baking data probably isn't what you're going to be thinking about doing. So then we get to the field of parameterized plots. And these are the kind of plots where you can ask the question, what if we just excluded one series from this? And you can write your code in such a way that you can feed in the series that you want to exclude and then regenerate the plot. So here we have it again, same plot, different data. And we can keep going as much as we need to. Now, you might have some examples that already spring into mind in your own context. Maybe you write reports time and time again, where the data is different every time, but it's the same kind of data. Or maybe you write reports about different regions or different organizations, and you have to do the same thing time and time again. This is where the parameterized plots come in. So instead of one panicky squirrel that didn't want to be changed, you've got a whole bunch of squirrels, and that's great. But the other thing I said I would talk about is data viz design systems, and this is where we get from the same old squirrel to a snazzy squirrel. And we talked about data viz design systems elsewhere. The way I like to think about them is decision-making shortcuts. And you may be familiar with Mark Zuckerberg's decision-making shortcut, which is this. He only has one outfit, and he has multiple copies of it. And that's fine. That's the decision that he's made, and we all know and love people like that. My husband would be somewhere along that line of thought when it comes to clothing. But we also all have people in our lives who just look a little bit more like this. You know, they turn up to events, and they always look really well put together. Their clothes just effortlessly fit well. They've got a style. If you come to the event later and you spot their coat on the rack, you know that it's their coat. It's just really them. And you think they must have a secret. What is that secret? Well, I can't tell you what that is when it comes to clothes, but when it comes to plots, we can do something very similar. And I really love working with clients to figure out what is the main style that they want and how can we make that functional for the kind of visualizations that they want to be presenting. So here are a few questions that we work through. What kind of colors do you want to be associated with the project? How much personality do you want to convey in the fonts? What's the maximum number of colors that you need in a visualization? Are there any key concepts that you report on that we need to find some pairings for? And what type of visualizations do you use a lot? And are there any brand guidelines that we can build on? You can revisit all of those questions at the link underneath there if you want to at any time. But I really love taking these things and working with them and finding, right, okay, how do we create their squirrel uniform? What is it that we're going to do that makes their plots look like them and that makes them work every single time? So there's a bunch of semantics involved. Semantics is what gets us from this plot to this plot. And you can see how much easier it is to see what's what once you've given it some meaningful colors. And you might be thinking, no, but I have brand guidelines and my marketing department's very clear that I need to stick to them. Okay, fine, let me just show you one thing. There we go. Which ingredient was at the bottom of that plot? Okay, let's go again. Which ingredient was at the bottom of that one? Okay, so having some semantic colors makes your plots so much easier to look at and quickly get the main story from. So it's worth looking at that. And it comes back to this notion of symbolism. Those of you who've been in the world of psychology or linguistics will have come across this before. Which one of these is Kiki? It's the spiky one. And there's a fairly clear international consensus that that's the case. And it's to do with the way that we map things that we see to the way that they sound. I like to think that we can do that with color as well. You know, which of these triangles is the happiest triangle? I think the yellow one looks nice and bright and happy. Yeah? Okay, good, we're on the same page. On top of that, though, we've got to bring in the brand colors or the client's preferences for what they like, because otherwise we're going to just create, you know, if everybody wanted something about happiness, we would create the same color everywhere, and then everybody would look the same. And you don't, you know, if you're a stylish squirrel, you want to stand out compared to the other also stylish squirrels. So you have to have your own brand fitting into that. A project that I worked on recently was for a researcher called Claire Meek, who works in the field of gestational diabetes. And so she wanted a brand for her plots that she said was feminine, but not too floral or sickly sweet, which was a fun concept to work with. So this painting came to mind by Leon Morocco, called Gene Resting, which has some really nice colors in it. You know, it's pink, but it's not in-your-face pink, and there's a lot of variability to play with. And then the next thing she said was, I need about 20 colors, which, yeah, great. Okay, that's a lot of colors to fit in a visualization. But we did it. We came up with a color palette that was based on this image, and that she was able to use in the different visualizations that she wanted to create with her team. And it was good fun. And then we applied that to these happy and sad triangles, and now they're on-brand happy and sad. And so you've got the kind of snazzy squirrel uniform coming together in all of this. Then we want to add a bit of typography, figure out how we want to change the text to make that work as well. I can't go into the details, but again, you can follow a link to a talk that I gave recently about how to craft your text well in your visualizations. And the beauty of doing this in R is that you can create packages that then just apply all of that snazzification, if that's going to be a word we're going to get away with, to your plots in just an extra 2 lines of code. And I just love the thought of people being able to focus their expertise on the stuff that needs their expertise, and then we can take care of the styling very, very quickly. It's a great shortcut, you know, when we're thinking about making a visualization. That in this one that I created, most of the time is spent figuring out, okay, how do I arrange the data? How do I make sure that it fits? And how do I get it into the shape that I want? The color decision is made very early on because I already had that color scheme that I knew I could reuse. So it's a great shortcut for doing that kind of stuff. And then if you add in the parameterization as well, you can create some pretty powerful stuff where you've got really nice looking plots that represent different bits of the data and that work well together. So why stop there? You know, from this one, I've recently finished a project with a client where we built the data viz design system, and then we built some slides so that they would look nice and on brand with it. This one, we went from this, and I teamed up with Daisy Lazarus, who's a local graphic designer, to build some Power BI dashboards that were using that styling as well. And you can see how this looks different from the Power BI dashboards that we've grown to know and love. And I think I used to say to people that I come in at the end of the pipeline, once we've done all the data stuff, and then we need to make it pretty. But actually, I would like to make the case that we should think about these things before we get to the end of the pipeline. And there are several reasons for that. One is that it forces you to think quite carefully about the type of data that you're going to collect. If you want to think about what it will look like, you have to think about how we're going to get the data to show that story. It helps you keep an eye on things as they develop. You know, the ingredients that were coming up in those plots, we could kind of have a race going and keep tally on that. It allows you to quickly present memorable graphs to internal stakeholders once you've got that. So was it that rhubarb or was it genoise that was at the bottom of that plot? It was rhubarb, yeah. And then we can have a quick turnaround once we've got all the data. We've all been in that position where there's a publication and the deadline is tomorrow and you're still waiting for the last bit of data. If she's got everything lined up nicely beforehand, it should be that you can have a quick turnaround. But it's more than just a time saver. It means that you bake in accessibility from the very start of your pipeline. You can have a unified aesthetic across memos and external publications wherever they end up, which then brings brand recognition for you and for your team. People know, okay, that's them. I recognize that. And no more procrastinating picking colors, or in my case, creating squirrel illustrations for a presentation. Have I got a few more minutes? Yeah. So I thought I would bring it all together and talk about an app that I've built just over the last few days using WebR. So for those of you who use, how many of you use R in the room? Okay, a good number of you. So have you heard of WebR? No. Good. Okay, this is good. So WebR is fairly recent, but what it allows you to do, it allows you to run R code within a web browser. So it's built using WebAssembly, and that's about as much as I'm going to say about it. But the beauty of it is it means that people can use R without having to install anything on their local devices. And I built this app partly because I was inspired by this bar graph that came through my door a few weeks ago. And the last time something like this came through my door, I spent a bit of time with my kids' toys trying to figure out why the bars were not the right length when you compare them to the data that's inside them. And I spent some time trying to figure out the maths behind what had happened there. And then I thought, what if there was an easier way of figuring this out? Rather than stacking monkeys or penguins on top of each other, could I create something that would allow people to put the data in and create a bar graph? Something that anyone could use that would check the accuracy of the bars, that would also see what we might be missing by choosing bars, because bars are not necessarily the right choice, and make use of the meme effect, because you know that memes travel far and wide. And then I thought, yeah, WebR, I can do that. So I created an app that allows people to do these things. So you can put in the values, and then it will spit out a bunch of graphs all together. And we've got the same principles going on throughout this. So we've got the styling, the colors that you put get applied across all of the plots, and they're always associated with the same group of people or the same bar. And we've got the theme. So I created a theme for the plot that then gets applied to all the plots. So again, they look like they've come from the same house, which is nice. And then all we need to do is create the plot and then apply the themes to it. And then we need to parameterize the unknown. So we need to take the data that people are giving us and build systems around it so that it will create the parameterized plots that we want to create. And we've talked about all that, so this is easy, right? So we've got a function that takes in the data, we've got a theming function, and then we've got a function that makes the graphs, that takes in that data and the theme, combines them, and spits out something that looks like this, which is quite fun. The glorious gory details, if you're interested, were when I fell into traps, like what if the sum isn't 100? What do we do with that? You know, if it's a percentage, fine, fill in the rest of them with NAs. It's quite good if people are reporting, 39% of people think this and 5% think this. Well, actually, what about all the rest of the people that are not featured in this data? It's worth highlighting them. But then what if it's greater than 100? And what if it's not a percentage? Do we change things there? So there's stuff in here that takes into account all these things that you can explore if you like to. And then what if they input the same color twice, like they did in the original? Maybe that's okay. We just leave it. What if the waffle package won't load? Because we need to take into account package loading and all these things. And what if it makes it super slow? That's okay. We can create it from scratch. So if you want to explore all the workarounds that I had to create, they're all in here, and you can do that in your own time. And if you want to give it a go, there is a QR code for the app just there. And it will work on your phones, which is quite fun. So you can run our code on your phones, and you can change the code that's inside the little code box if you want to, and rerun it and do something totally different. But there we have it, an app that does that. Having said all that about bar graphs and how there are better ways of doing it, I think the libdems did do one thing right, which is that they applied their data viz design system consistently. You know, you see that thing and you know that's come from the libdems because it's got their branding on it. And so they've kind of made my case for me that you know, looking for design rules that you can apply consistently through your stuff gives you that recognition that you're looking for. So that's all I have to share with you this evening. I'm really looking forward to chatting in person while we're here. Feel free to send me an email. You can find me on LinkedIn, and here are a bunch of QR codes if you want to explore anything further, or if you have someone in mind and you think, actually, that I should chat to so-and-so about this, then send them a link. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love the use of squirrels as well, and also appealed to my marketing nature with all the chat about brand as well. Thank you very much. Right, hang on to your questions for Cara. We'll add them on at the end. But now I'm going to welcome Martina Pugliese, who is a research data scientist for Inscribe AI, and the title of your talk is Data Science is for Everyone. Thank you.
Right, it's green. Hopefully that's fine. Yeah. So hello everybody. Car's talk was amazing. I hope I can keep up the quality. We'll see. So yeah, my talk is more about, you know, Stephen came to me and asked, could you talk about your career? And I always think, why are people interested so much in my career? But if I can give people some, not advice, but you know, the idea that data science is actually a field not just for PhD people like me and Cara, but it's actually something that we need more people, more variety, more diversity overall. So please, you know, enter this field, approach it, and just try things out. So I'll try pass that message. How do I go? Of course. Hang on. First failure. Yeah. Hang on. How do I bring you back? I guess I'm not used to Mac. See, that's what I was meaning, right? You know, even technical people can't. All right. So, who am I first? Why am I here? What do I want? As Ali was saying, I currently work as a senior research scientist at a startup called Inscribe. But I have been doing a bunch of stuff beforehand. So first of all, I study physics. So I come from the so-called hard sciences, which is a term I don't really like because there's no such thing as hard sciences or soft sciences, I think. There's culture, there's science, and everything is interesting. So I did a PhD in physics. So here you go. But I've also studied some linguistics, which I find it extremely fascinating. And so with the tools of physics, I've been analyzing the evolution of natural language, so how we talk and how natural language changes in time, specifically looking at English. At the time, this was a while ago, I'm not going to tell you how long ago, but it was a while ago. NLP was kind of in its infancy, so these days you can do all these fancy things with LLMs, and you know, the field has been exploding in the last few years. But at the time, we didn't even have good data to analyze the progression and the trends in language. So this is just a plot that I pulled from my PhD thesis, which will tell you basically that some verbs in English have become irregular in time. Something like hide, irregular in the past tense, so they have a past tense that doesn't end in ed. But some verbs stayed regular, and some verbs became regular as well. A verb like dwell, which I'm not sure dwelled or dwelt will be the past tense, oscillates in time. So each bubble here is a decade. This is the corpus of historical American English. At the time, it was the only large corpus of text that you could use to do language analysis, and we had to do all of these fancy things like OCR and machine learning to classify what was a past tense, what was an adjective. So this is just my start into the world, the fantastic world of ML. And then I worked mostly for startups. I started with a company called Molzida that became This Is Unfolded, and it's an Edinburgh-based company. Worked in fashion, wore many hats, built a team, and started doing more management then. Then I worked at Testcard, another company based in England, but they had a dev team here in Edinburgh doing computer vision. So I started doing fancy things that I keep doing to this day. And also built a team, led a team. We got Delphine here, who would tell you that she was in my team back then, and so she still loves me, so that's probably a good sign. You can tell people, I'm not gonna say how good I was. Yeah, and recently worked at Shopify as well, so a large organization, and doing more canonical data science, working in the revenue team, helping the company acquire more deals, analyze merchants churn and all these things. And recently moved, it's been a month, at a company called Inscribe AI, where I do ML, AI, data science, mostly in the, again, in the field of computer vision. But stressing the point that I do acknowledge my luck and my privilege. We all know that women, as well as other groups, are not so well represented in the world of data science and probably especially AI. Or tech in general. I think it's getting better. Definitely initiatives like this help. So my main message tonight will be, you don't need a PhD, you don't need to be, this fancy genius that people think we are. We're not. We make a lot of mistakes, lots of failures. Data science has to be, in my opinion, something for everybody, because the only way to make this field fairer. Like AI is amazing. There's lots of things that you could do. I saw the stickers, where is it, support or replace, one of them. You can do lots of things. It can help you. We all use it, I guess, but there's lots of issues with it, ethical issues that mostly stem out of the fact that it's not every group is represented, and the humanity side of it, like literally the human side of what data do we feed the system with, has not been fully addressed yet. So my message is everybody should do more data science, everybody should go into AI, and just to help the field becoming more fair. So I love this quote. I put it in most of my slides. If you look at my slides deck that I go online, it's probably there all the time. The keyword in data science is not data, it is science, because we can focus on the data part. Like back in 10 years ago, it was all about big data, and people thought that just the quantity will solve all the issues. Then it turns out that the quantity doesn't mean necessarily quality. So you still need to think, and you still need to think like a human, and so we still need the human brain. AI is not there yet. It's starting to help us kind of address some of the most menial tasks, but these systems are, to this day, still need the human to be trained and to be deciding again what data do we feed them with, which is the important part. Garbage in, garbage out. So in terms of AI, I mostly work in computer vision. So back in the days, I was saying I worked in NLP, natural language processing, when I was at uni. That was in its infancy, and kind of the that field exploded in the last couple of years, but my work has been mostly in computer vision. This is a graph, a plot, a visualization from what I was doing, working in fashion, trying to recognize what's a top or what's a bottom in terms of clothing. I think Delphine is laughing because she remembers that. We had to tag lots of images for training this system, and so the machine, eventually we did get to a good system, but as you can see, it was still getting it wrong. You know, on the left you got the prediction from our neural network, and on the right this was the ground truth. So in this case, just to illustrate that you can see footwear when there is no footwear. On the bottom, because I needed, you know, I just was playing around with stuff. This was me going to a museum. It's in Atlanta. There's the Coca-Cola Museum. If you're happen in Atlanta and you have 2 hours to spare, I wouldn't say it's the best museum ever, but it's worth a visit. There's better stuff in Atlanta. There's lots of interesting stuff. But anyway, you know, teaching a machine to recognize bottles, and so you can teach a network to see bottles even on when it's like a visualization, an image, and not an actual bottle. So these days, this was actually, when was that, Delphine? A few years ago, 5 years ago or something? So today we got more and more commoditized tooling, and you can do these things much, much quicker, actually. But I believe in a world where, again, we need more diverse players. So I like to, if I can pass this message, because I've been extremely lucky, I have. I didn't suffer from any outright discrimination, although we all know that there is discrimination, you know, under the hood. But I have been privileged. There's lots of people there who haven't been as privileged as I am. And I think the only way to change that is to have more people enter this field and push and just trying to understand things from first principle, fail fast, and learn. So then again will be my message. What do I do at night? Not really at night, mostly at weekend, to be honest. At night I like to sleep. I need to probably get Cara to teach me a few things, but I also do some data visualizations, because why not? I do data by day, and then, you know, I'm not tired of data. I just also do it in my free time. So I have a newsletter and a blog. It's called Doodling Data. What I do, I create data visualizations by hand. I literally draw them, pick up some public data sets, or I source my own data sets and try to create funky data visas, as I call them. Sometimes they are on a serious topic, like we live in the 6 mass extinctions. This was from a paper. It's obviously related to the topic of climate change. We humans have killed lots of species. We killed lots of biodiversity. Or coral loss has been decreasing almost for 50% in the last, what was that, 3 decades or something. So I do these kind of things to try to teach myself, learn, and just enjoy. The EU, European Union of Working Women, you can see the percentage of the workforce that is women in each European country. This data is old, and that's actually why the UK is there, because this is the EU, so this is before, I think it's 2017. But let's not start on that. But yeah, you see countries like, I'm Italian, you see countries like Italy, which have a fairly low percentage of women that could work that actually are in work. Southern Europe is not faring that great. On the bottom, you probably can't see very well, but this is a timeline of human epidemics or pandemics, like HIV or COVID, classified as pandemics. Because of course, the bubble will be the estimated number in history. The farther you go back in time, the less reliable this data is. But there's lots of pathogens that can kill us. And one of my favorites is colors, in this case Renoir, Impressionist painter. I was just looking at all the images from Renoir's painting I could download online. I think it was Wikipedia page, and I was analyzing what percentage of color you see in each of these paintings, and you see that there's a lot of oranges and reds, but also a bunch of greens and blues, because he drew in open air, you know, the Impressionism. And if you do this with other painters, I did Caravaggio. Very different story, because it's mostly religious subjects. So yeah, this is me. I did recently a live with Talk Python, which is a podcast, because I was asked to talk about these databases. I don't think they are perfect, so again, Cara could teach me a few things, especially about the use of color and things, because I try to learn. But this is me saying I'm not a database expert. I just try to learn, and these are the good ones. There's a lot of failed ones, which I'm not ashamed of putting out online anyway. I'm getting some feedback. I think it's useful. So yeah, thanks to everybody. Special thanks to Vasily Kandinsky for furnishing the pictures here. I'm sure he loves to be quoted. And yeah, any questions, grab me or pick me on LinkedIn or whatever social.
Thank you so much. Big round of applause. Can I keep you, Martina, for the next bit? And I'm going to invite Cara back up as well, if that's okay.
Sure, I'm going to try climbing this
I know, these are quite intimidating, these chairs.
Yeah, but you're taller. So.
Especially for smaller people.
Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done. I'm actually going to hover, because if anyone's got questions, I'm going to go and take the microphone around. But I'm going to start with a couple of questions of my own, if that's okay. But first, thanks so much. Those were really, really interesting talks. Very creative as well, which always surprises me when I listen to data talks. So really, really good, really interesting. My first question had been about your sort of career journey and how you started out in data, but I feel like both of you covered that. But just sort of to ask sort of the tail end of that then is, was it always going to be data science or tech? I think you both said kind of no, you started elsewhere, but if you just want to go into a bit more detail about that, and I'll start with Cara, please.
So I was one of those kids at school that found it really hard to decide what to do. I enjoyed languages, I enjoyed music, I enjoyed maths, and went into medicine for a year and then decided that wasn't for me. I was much more interested in people's minds than I was in people's bodies. Psychology, you did a lot of statistics, took the stats, went to the college, data viz. So it's been one of those journeys that, what I'm doing now wasn't an option when I was growing up. It just didn't really exist. And I think that's one of the key things that I encourage people to think about is, what do you enjoy, what are you good at, and the job that you might end up doing might not exist now. And so how can you build skills that are going to be useful for whatever you might end up doing? Does that answer your question?
That does, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Martina, same question.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I've always been fascinated with data. I remember I used to count things when I was a kid. Like I was counting the length of advertisement in Italy. I'm Italian, and so like advertisement has been lengthening in time in TV, and I was annoyed about that. I was trying to demonstrate this. Because my mom wouldn't believe me, but then it didn't do much with it. I should have done a visa. That would have been fun, like age 6 or something. So I don't know. I always liked the idea of quantifying things and trying to understand things from first principles. But I obviously, like yourself, data science or data work wasn't a thing when I was even at uni. So that tells you how old I am. But yeah, like I wanted to be a researcher actually. So that's why I've done a PhD. I thought, studying practical physics, and I was like, no, actually, I want to do something a little bit more applied. And then again, was very lucky. This field starts to be a thing. I was like, that sounds interesting. So.
Yeah, I think it just shows it's never exactly linear, is it?
It's never.
So it's quite interesting. One more question for me, then I'll see if I've got any from the audience. Could you tell us, Cara, first, if you don't mind, any challenges that you faced as a woman in a male-dominated sector and how you've dealt with them? Any sort of resistance you've encountered along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I feel quite privileged that I haven't really encountered that much resistance. I think, I remember being asked the question when I started working at the college, one of the things they asked us was, how are you going to convince people of what you're talking about? And I was very conscious that I was going into meetings where I was interacting with very senior surgeons who had a lot of experience in understanding stuff, and I was often, women were definitely in the minority because of the way just the surgical careers have progressed over the years. And I remember being asked, how are you going to convince them that you know what you're talking about? And my answer was, because it's not about me. It's about the message, and it's about making sure that is rock solid. And so it's not about, I don't want to be getting in the way of the message. And I think that's been a principle that I've stuck to, that if people are questioning why you're doing something, if you can show your workings, if you can show the reasoning behind it, you stand a much better chance of convincing them than if you just go and say, well, just because I say so. That's never going to work. So I think, I don't think I can really point to hostility at all on that front. There have been the odd stereotype that they didn't necessarily take the coding side of what I do particularly seriously in other places until suddenly a guy joins the team, and then they're like, oh, clearly you do coding. It's like, well, yes, we've been doing it for a long time. But I think it's good to, in all these situations, I think there's assumptions that people come with, and that we can help debunk. And the more open we are about the work that we do, the more we're going to contribute to a field that's more open and equal for everybody. Kind of like what you were saying, that the more of us get involved in data and talk openly about our work, the easier it's going to become.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And same to you as well, please, Martina.
Yeah, I said I've always been very privileged myself. I never encountered outright discrimination, but have I been in rooms where I was the only one looking different? Yes. And did I question that? Not really, because that was the reality. That was what I thought, that was just my inner bias as well. Sometimes it's about recognizing, actually, it's not about me. It's about the human beings, and it's actually about civil rights. So I think we should push a little bit more. So again, that's the only thing I've learned with time. Just don't be ashamed. Just I know it sounds very easy to say, but failing and redoing and the perseverance, it will gives you a head start. So it's the only way we can change something. But yeah, I know that it's very hard to give actual practical advice. But I think it's getting better. I'm positive. I think the situation is getting much better, even since 10 years ago, I would say. So.
Good, there's a positive note there. Right, I'm going to go out to the audience. If you want to stick your hand up, I'll come at you with a microphone. If you've got any questions, please don't be shy. Feel free to ask anything you'd like. Okay, perfect. Bear with me. I'll just go to the hand I saw first, then I'll come to the next one.
Hi, thank you both for your talks. They're really good. Just more of a practical question, I guess. So I find it really overwhelming, just the different tools that are out there. So yeah, my preference is using R, but obviously a lot of people use Python, and then you've got Power BI and all the things that come along with that. And just in your experience, do you prefer knowing lots of languages but maybe not as in depth, or are you more of a let's focus on one and kind of stick to it?
Do you want to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves. Data science is extremely ambiguous, and it's been evolving like growing arms and legs. And I feel like we are probably at this crossroad where it's starting to develop into more sub-branches since a few years ago. So in terms of tooling, it will largely depend on what you end up doing. But for me, it's much more important to invest time trying to understand things from principle again, and just kind of the science behind this. The basic things like basic statistics is fundamental, I will say. Then what language you use will depend on what you end up doing. I was using R when I was at uni, for instance, to do the analysis, and haven't been using it in a long time. So I wouldn't be able to do what Cara does because I'm just a Python person by habit. And yet, Python is probably more developed when it comes to some areas, some sub-areas, maybe actually probably the AI areas these days, because people have been developing libraries for that. So if you go into that strand, it's worth investing the time there. But I will say, yeah, just if you're starting, focus on the fundamentals, and then again, train your brain to think about looking at first principle. Everything else will come, because the reality is there's a new package, a new paper, a new something every day. You can't possibly know it all, and I was trying to do that, and it's a lost battle. So just yeah, train your brain to think, and it will come.
Did you want to add anything, Cara?
No, I mean, I very much work in R. That's where I am most comfortable. But I think it's like anything. It's like, you know, the languages that we speak. Once you've learnt how one language works and you've learnt a second language as a foreign language, it's easier to figure out, okay, well, those are the mechanics. That's how the Lego bricks fit together. I can try and find out the rules for the next language. So I think I would say don't try and do everything. Focus on getting comfortable in the thing that's going to be most useful for what you're doing. So if you're in a team where everybody is just using Power BI and Excel, you can get really, really good at that. You could also think, okay, how could I do this in R and bring it into Power BI if you wanted to as a next step. And then if you've got big data wrangling to do, you might want to explore Python. So it's figuring out what tool is going to be the best one for the job that you've got to do that's going to give you the outcome with the path of least resistance. Yeah. And it might not be the immediate path of least resistance. There might be quite a learning curve to it, but it's the path of least resistance going forwards, the one that's going to be most maintainable. And find a community of people who are trying to do what you do using the language that you want to learn to use, because I think learning in community is just a huge benefit when we're doing this kind of stuff.
Thanks very much. I think I had another question from over here somewhere. Does someone have their hand up? Sorry.
Thank you both so much. It's really interesting to hear your talks. You've both got so many projects on. I'm just really curious to hear what you're excited about. What have you got coming up? What are you looking forward to in terms of what's next?
You start.
Let's start this one. Yeah, one of the things I really enjoy about what I do is that no two projects are the same. So if I'm building, I've just finished building a database design system for a research group, and they've showed it to their colleagues, and they're really excited about using it, and that's really exciting. And then at the same time, I'm trying to wrap up another project, which is a Shiny app, which is more to do with tables and getting the data in a way that is accessible to people. I think the thing that I get excited about across the board in these projects is the impact that it has on making things easier for the end user. And so if somebody comes to me with a project that sounds kind of technically quite challenging and interesting, but that doesn't necessarily do that for the end user, then I would probably question, can we add something in that would achieve that effect? So yeah, I think I'm excited about that. I'm excited about another project that's about to start, which is a database design system specifically with end users in mind, rather than just the research team and the immediate consumers of the data, to do with health. And I'm excited about getting started on that and figuring out, how do we find colours that make sense of these metrics and do it in a way that's sensitive. We're talking about humans and in different categories, and how do we find ways to express that in a way that helps people interact with the data well and present it well to other people. So yeah, I'm excited about making people's lives easier, both from the researcher's point of view and from the end user's point of view.
Yeah, for me, it's like anything that comes onto my plate, so long as there is a learning element, I just get excited about this. I know it sounds very, very cheesy to say, but I am one of those people that gets bored quite quickly when I do rote stuff. For example, now I joined this club and I'm having a great time because it's about solving some challenging problems, and yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, what comes next, I don't know. It's the same with my cards, the kind of stuff I do there. I don't want to repeat the same stuff over and over because, oh yeah, I've done this already. Let me learn and try to visualize democracy in the world and fail very badly and do something that is extremely ugly and doesn't tell a story, and then just redo it. So for me, it's about that learning element, which for me, again, I think I've said this a few times, it's the most important element in working with data. It's about just challenging your own assumptions and just learn something new and fail, put it out. People will say, oh, this is not good, and then you learn something. So that's good.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other questions from the audience at all? Yes.
Thank you so much for your talks. Because both talks were saying that you don't need to be a genius to work in the data science field, so what would be your advice as the first step? So if someone is really interested into going into this field, what would be the first thing that they need to do?
Good question.
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, as I was saying, I think it's less about the toolings, especially at the early stage. The toolings will come, and it's more about having a good grip of the foundations. Again, I was lucky because the foundations, I've done it at uni, although at that time, data science wasn't a phrase. These days, there's lots of courses. There's lots of materials, however, that you can peruse for free. So I think, obviously, some coding. I will tend to recommend learn some easy Python to start with, because it's going to come in handy later, and the basics of stats. Stats is going to lead then into machine learning. If you want to go, very, very broad answer, but just try to make your foundations understood. And you will see that these days there's lots of tooling, even in AI, that in a few lines of code you're able to produce something that's quite surprising, and that's really good, and they're for free, and you can use machinery, software to run machine learning systems for free, which wasn't a thing even a few years ago. So very broad, but I have a list of stuff. Maybe if you're interested, I could show you. Like I maintain my own list of preferred stuff. So I can point you to that. But it's my opinion. It's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would also say figure out what it is that you want to do. Find either a topic that you find really interesting and that's got some data around that you can play with, or find a skill that you really enjoy seeing other people use, and try and develop that skill for yourself. One key thing I would say is that it's really helpful if you've got an online portfolio somehow of your work, and it doesn't have to be anything particularly complicated. It can be just a public GitHub repo where you can point people so that they can see the type of code that you write, the projects that you've worked on, and having a few kind of passion projects within that is really, really great. There's a book by an artist called Austin Kleon called Show Your Work. I love his stuff. I find it really, really helpful. And yeah, he talked, there's Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going, I think, are the three. Highly recommend those books. It's written from a creative side, but I found it helpful as somebody who kind of bridges that creative and tech worlds in terms of getting your stuff out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about iterations. It's about learning from the feedback that you get from the community. And when you start out, you feel really vulnerable because you're really aware of the bits in your code that you just copy pasted that from Stack Exchange. You're not entirely sure why it works, but it works. We've all done it, and so you gradually learn. Okay, well that's why that works, and then you try and reuse it somewhere else, and it doesn't work, and you go and learn something new about that. But the more you try to create things and to put things out there, the quicker you'll learn. Rather than trying to do all the theory squirreled away in a box somewhere, just try and get stuff out there, and it will help.
Thank you so much. Great question. Have we got any other questions from the crowd? Oh, perfect. And then maybe I'll ask one myself.
Thank you so much for both talks. I really enjoyed them. I honestly just had a couple of questions, really, but they are related. And it's how do you fight with the imposter syndrome, especially when it's so difficult to keep up with everything that is going on?
Yeah. I would say acknowledge it. So acknowledge that you will never keep up with everything. It's just not possible. But find the thing that you're really good at and keep developing that skill. So for me, one of the things that I want to try and get better at over the course of this year is making interactive plots. I can make them with R, and that's fine, but I want to learn other languages that help you do that in a way that is more flexible than building stuff in R and then building stuff on top of that, although that's actually quite a useful trick. I think, yeah, there's always stuff that's out there, and you think, oh, I don't know anything about that. How can I possibly call myself a data scientist? Data science is really, really broad. Thinking back to the surgeons, there's a whole range of different types of surgeons, and you pick the surgeon that's right for the particular thing that needs to be operated on. You don't just go to any surgeon for that. So everybody specializes, and I think there's a fear that data science is talked about so broadly that we end up thinking that we need to know about everything, and we can't. So specialize in what you're excited about, and own it, and just know it's okay. I don't need to know about these things because I'm really good at this bit. And I think that should help.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I was trying to play that game. Oh, I need to know everything. Having that kind of academic mentality initially of saying, oh, I need to study everything. It's just impossible. There's just too many people producing amazing stuff around. So I just sign up to a few newsletters that maybe summarize things for me, and that's helpful. But yeah, acknowledge that you can't know it all. You will never know it all. There's areas that you won't practice because maybe in your job you don't get to practice that kind of thing. But as someone was asking, what comes next? Find yourself the possibility to maybe get out of your comfort zone continuously and just try something new, if you so like. I mean, it doesn't have to be if you like to go into depth. I'm personally a person I like breadth rather than depth. Like I like to do different things often at the same time, but if you want to specialize, just keep going. You become an expert into something, but yeah, just acknowledge that there's no way you're going to keep up with everything, or try everything, or know it. But it's, so long as you got your brain that knows the fundamentals and can understand the patterns, then you become faster at learning as well, which I still think is probably the most useful of human features, the ability to learn very quickly. So yeah. And fail. Fail. Do horrible graphs. Fail.
Yeah.
Cara will say, this is horrible. You gotta.
No, I really like your graphs. I think that's great.
Okay, you've not seen the bad ones.
No, well, that's okay. I've made some terrible ones in my own time. I would also say, learn fast and learn different things, but also make friends with people that work in totally different areas of data science to you. Because just in having conversations with them, you'll pick up on things that are exciting that you should maybe have a read up about, just so that you're aware of it. But also, I'm at an exciting stage where I'm getting to bring other people on to do projects with me, and I've got a friend, Crystal Lewis, who she just loves data cleaning. And whenever I say that to people, they're like, really? And it's one of those people I'm so glad she exists, because we need people who love data cleaning. And she knows so much more about all the intricacies involved in getting that right than I do. And so it's great to have these friends who are specializing in different things. Whether that's specializing in different languages or different skills within the same language, you can't possibly know everything, even just within one language. But make friends with people who are excited about what they do and who will talk to you about it.
Thank you. Some really good advice. I'm going to ask one final question, then we'll release you from your high stools. The quote is from me, really, and I didn't have this written down. It's just occurred to me now. If you were to go back, would you do anything differently career-wise, or are you comfortable with how you got to where you are? We'll ask Martina first, since Cara just finished talking.
No, I'm comfortable. I'm happy. I've got a pretty erratic career, someone will say, meaning I didn't do the typical maybe corporate growth. As I was saying, I mostly work with startups. That's probably the environment where I feel most comfortable. But it's been good to try the big company as well. But yeah, no, I'm really happy. Really happy with what I've done, what I've learned, and stuff that didn't work along the way. So yeah, maybe I would just say, yeah, try to worry a little bit less. I used to be extremely worried. Oh, if this doesn't work amazingly, I'm not going to sleep. Still do that, but getting better at that. But yeah, wouldn't change much.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would change much either. I think it's one of those things I can see all the pieces of the puzzle falling into place as I look back on it, but I could never have predicted where I am now had I looked at it from the start going into the future. So I guess the lesson there is trust the process. Take the step that's the one that's just in front of you, and then it might lead to an adventure that goes in a different direction from what you had in mind. But no, I don't think I would change anything. I'm grateful for the things that I tried that didn't work out, and I'm grateful for where I am now.
Love it. Thank you so much. Can I give yes?
One question online.
Oh sure. Oh yeah, sure. Do you have it written down or? Oh sure. I'll pass it over. Sorry. Are you okay for one more question?
Yeah.
Apologies. Sorry.
What helps? God, I can hear myself. What helps to develop skills in designing unusual visualizations using ggplot2?
Yep, that's probably one for me. One thing that really helped me was discovering the Tidy Tuesday community on Twitter. Now, Twitter is a very different place now to the place that it was 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. But find people who are doing the types of visualizations that you want to create and ask them how they did it. If they're not sharing the code behind them, which most of us do actually, if they're not sharing the code, I'm sure they'll be able to give you some advice on that. My website's got a bunch of talks with ggplot specific skills in them, a couple of workshops there. But there are so many tools out there. I think the thing that really accelerated my learning, honestly, was seeing what other people were doing, and my mind was completely blown by, can you do this in ggplot? That's just crazy. And then I thought, actually, they've shared the code of how they've done it. So I went and had a look and copied across the things that were the solutions that I was missing, and then just continued to build on that. And getting involved in Tidy Tuesday was great because it was a regular activity, and also it was data sets where you can't really put your foot in it. It was, ratings in a coffee competition, or how many penguins are on each island, or it was stuff that there was no political faux pas that you were going to make, and nobody was going to make any really big life decisions based on a plot that you made. So yeah, I think that would probably be the advice. It would be find a community where people are doing that, to get involved, ask questions, and share your stuff online and get feedback and ask people how to improve it. But also stay away from data that people might actually make a life decision on. I think when we went through COVID, there were so many people practicing their skills on COVID data in ways that were actually really quite unhelpful. Yeah. And there can be a tendency to think, I can do data, therefore I can do everybody's job. And that's just such an arrogant position. There are people who are specialists in their own field, and we need to respect that. The tools that we have are tools, but they don't replace expertise. And so stay away from data like that, but practice as much as you can on creating fun things with data that doesn't matter, like the bake-off package. That's a good one to try.
It's amazing.
Did you want to answer?
Yeah, no, just to sign on that. There were lots of people, even academic people, trying to start them becoming experts in virology or public health. So that's not something, maybe in good faith, but it's not a good way to approach things. Because again, domain expertise matters. Data doesn't have all the answers. You need domain expertise. In fact, for a successful project to work very well at work, or in your side projects or whatever, talk to the humans. You might learn something that you don't know and that you might not see in the data. So that's super important. That's why humans are still very important. We're not going to be replaced anytime soon, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for the online question as well. That was a nice wee add-on in the end. And I did promise I'd let you go. So if you could give a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you. Just a couple of quick tiny points from me just before the end is to thank you all very much for coming. I really do appreciate such a good turnout, and for all those who asked questions, thank you. Thanks very much to Live to Air again for running our live stream and all the mics and AV and everything that they do. If you haven't joined our community, please do it. Keep an eye out for the next Women in Data meetup. We'd love to have you along again. We'll get another date posted soon. And our next events that are cropping up, we've got Data Talent in March, on the 12th of March, which is a recruitment event. It's at the Science Centre in Glasgow. And our next meetup is on the 26th of March. It's Data and AI-driven entrepreneurship. So they'll all be on the community. So if you need more information about them, feel free to have a look on there. But thanks again, and another round of applause for our speakers. Thanks.
Yeah, we need to get down. Getting down is easier.